Hi, my name is Mirabai Pease, and I am an actor.
And this is the first question I always have to ask everybody. When did this interest, this curiosity, this passion for acting start for you? When did that begin?
Oh, it began when I was very little. I grew up as a crew baby, so my dad was the first AD for my sort of whole childhood and teenagehood. So I always, I always loved set, and it was always very tangible to me. I don't know if that necessarily instilled like the love for acting, but it made me aware of it being a career and it being an interest. And then I mean, both my parents are very creative. So my mum sent me to the School of Philosophy in Sydney, which is, yeah, it's a really amazing primary school where they get kids to perform a Shakespeare at the end of each year. No matter what year you are. So you could be year zero. I don't know if you have that in America, but year zero to year six, you perform a Shakespeare play. I was there for 3 years. So I think in year two, I did like As You Like It. Year three, I did, no, year two was The Tempest. Year three was As You Like It. And year four was Macbeth. And so I think there's a really obvious time. That was a really obvious time to fall in love with acting.
Yeah, that's I've never heard of that, especially doing it that young. I mean, when you were, I'm not, I mean, it's a while ago, but when you were doing that, did you feel like, oh, it seems like something I want to do, further on, or was it more of a, this is just a school thing. I'm just gonna get through it and see what happens.
No, no, I think I knew as soon as I was doing it, I was like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I was already doing dancing and I knew what acting was because of my upbringing. But I think as soon as I was on that stage and I could feel that it was more than just doing the movements, because of course, when you're little, when I was in year two, it was like just sort of saying the words and absolutely not knowing what they meant, and like, like I'm so shocked, hands in the air, being like a year two sort of, that's probably like 6 years old or whatever. But then as I progressed, I realized it was like dancing but inside, and it felt really special and unique to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird experience, especially I started later, so I didn't have that as a child, but I can only imagine, your imagination is already at full force. You're already brewing all these different scenarios and worlds that things just come full force to you. And with doing all of that, did you have, artists that you, I don't want to say idolized, but that you looked up to when you were younger, that you saw their career and went, I want to do what they did. That would be really cool. Did you have anybody in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember my dad was the first AD on Charlotte's Web, and so I remember going onto set, and I was a bit younger than her, maybe. Oh yes, I was probably quite a bit younger than Dakota Fanning, but I remember seeing her on set and her being an actor and being so excited by the thought of being able to do what I do on stage, but it not having to be Shakespeare and getting to be in like cute little like dungarees and like running around with pigs. Um, so I think I immediately formed like a an admiration for Dakota Fanning, and I've definitely watched her career since, because I think that was the first insight into a professional actor. But I of course loved like Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman. I mean, Keira Knightley was Bender like Beckham. She was Love Actually. And as a little girl, I just loved those. And then as she grew up, she had such an amazing career. I mean, and when I was a teenager, I became a really big fan of Joe Wright. So she did Atonement, Pride and Prejudice, Anna Karenina. And I just, yeah, Keira Knightley for sure. And Natalie Portman, because I saw myself in her. And she was Star Wars, she was Leia. So again, it was like when I was a little kid and I loved the Star Wars movies, and then she grew up and I grew up and she was doing Black Swan, and now she's doing Annihilation and Vox Lux. Like yeah, I think I really attached myself to actors that grew up with me, even though they're quite a lot older than me. Their careers grew as I grew.
Yeah, you start to notice that shift in those
Yeah,
progressions, right? Yeah, where they go from a mainly a comedic actor for, some of the other stars to, oh, they can do drama really well. I never thought about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, like Leia is Star Wars action figure, but if you mean she was Leon first, she was in Leon first, so it's so exciting to see that in people's careers and to think it's not, acting is not one thing, it's not one job. It's such a myriad of beautiful worlds and imagination. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not sure if it has happened for you yet. For some, it starts after they win a couple of awards and they go, I think I'm ready to give this acting thing a proper shot." But I mean, for the very fortunate ones. But when did you figure out, this is what I wanna do for a career? Has that moment passed you? And when it did, what was that like for you?
Yeah. I I think it was after school for sure because I had a few jobs during school, professional acting jobs. I mean, I asked for an agent when I was 12, which because I watched TV and I figured out what an agent was and I figured out how to get auditions and get a job. I did all that research on my own. And then my mum was like, okay, we'll get you an agent. But I was still very much like living a very normal kid life. I did like the school musicals and I loved school. I loved learning. I was always a high achiever. So while acting was there for me, I hadn't quite committed. And I guess that's also being living in New Zealand as well. Like there's not a whole lot of work for actors, especially when you're young and it's not go, go, go. It's just sort of very chill and relaxed. And so it wasn't until I graduated, and I graduated with a scholarship. So I was studying film and English at uni, and I realized that acting, while I was doing an audition every like here and there, and I was doing theater, it didn't. I knew that I hadn't committed, that I wasn't going after the goal that I wanted since I was little as much as it needed. And I just thought I need to give this a go now. It's what I love, and so I quit uni. I mean, I did it part time for a while, but I, in theory, quit uni. I'm like so addicted to learning, so it's really hard for me to quit to quit any form of learning. But yeah, and I went to acting school, and so yeah, it was in acting school that I really knew I wanted to be an actor, and I made the commitment to myself. I made it to other people, and installed that confidence and that knowing of being like, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing now. There's no other distractions that I'm letting myself have, and it kind of takes that. Yeah, unless you get really lucky when you're little. I think when you're older, I don't. You probably went through. I don't know. Did you get to a stage in your life where you were like, I have to commit, or otherwise it's gonna pass me by?
Honestly, yeah, it was, first big movie I ever did where I was there for 4 or 5 days and wrapped filming and then went to see the premiere like a year later, and I thought, we'll try this out, and it's not isolated as New Zealand. If New Zealand is, I wouldn't even say it's isolated, but you're not in LA, you're not in New York, you're not in Vancouver, you're not in Sydney, so you are really just trying to venture out and give some sort of outreach to build your career. And with your parents being so creative and so supportive of the arts, what was their reaction like to you saying, "I'm going to be a performer. This is going to be my job"?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they saw it coming. I'm definitely one of those kids. I think a lot of actors are that was always in front of the video camera when they were little, dancing and mommy, look at me, don't look at Sylvie. Sylvie's my sister. And so I mean, they didn't want to just push me into it. They're not those kind of parents. They wanted to make sure it was something I loved, and they could see it was something I loved. And I was so lucky that they nurtured that and they listened to me. But it was only when I asked for an agent that they got me an agent, which I'm really thankful for because I would never want to be pushed into acting. it's so wonderful to love acting and to really fight for it, because if I had fallen into it, I think maybe some of the early rejection when I was really little would have pulled me out of it for sure. Because I got my first job when I was like 14, and you don't get job after job after job
No.
if unless it's very small percentage of people do, but especially in New Zealand, it's just like absolutely not. And so I think my parents were definitely worried that the rejection would get to me, but it didn't. And my mom has instilled such a confidence inside me. And like, I remember from such a young age being like, oh yeah, like I didn't get the role because I didn't look like the part. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't. You don't look like the mom, so you didn't get the role. And I cannot tell you how important and like setting up the structures that was for me. And it really made it about the work, about getting good, and about learning. So yeah, I'll always be thankful for my parents. I'm so lucky, because so many people, parents are like, nope, you can't be an actor. That's absolutely not. You're going to get nothing out of that. I don't trust you. um, but yeah, no, they were supportive for sure.
That's such a progressive way of thinking, especially when you're a parent trying to guide another creative into a very unstable career path. That logic of, yeah, you didn't get it because you don't fit X, Y, or Z. Putting it outside of yourself instead of, I don't know, we've seen those stage parents who just drill, guilt into their kids, and it's horrifying. So that's lovely that you had that kind of support. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to let them find it for themselves. I mean, look, I'm not a mom. I can't speak on that, but I yeah, she let me, and my parents let me find it for myself. They didn't push anything, and that's such a gift.
I do wanna go back to, you said you had your first gig at 14. That's a very
Yeah,
surreal experience, especially with being that young. What was that, if you can recall, what was that like for you?
yeah, it was so fun. It was so fun, especially as my character was this naughty, bad influence to the other girl in the show. It was about a detective and his daughter, and then I was the daughter's like bad influence that kind of like led her astray. And it was so fun for 14-year-old me, who was I was pretty goody two shoes, but I had like no I think I had started watching Skins, and I knew what it was to be like edgy. Yeah. And it was nothing like Skins, but I wanted to be a bit edgy. So I remember there was like a drinking scene, and obviously it was water, and I don't think I drank alcohol, but it was ever before then. But it was so fun to be able to like imitate that, and there were boys. Oh my goodness, I went to an all girls school, so there were boys on set, and they were my age, and my character was meant to be flirting with them, and I was like, what world is this? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's so funny how I remember it, because obviously my 14-year-old brain wasn't like, oh yay, like I'm on set, I get to do acting. It was like, wow, I'm drinking fake alcohol, and now there's boys, and I get to wear makeup. But the most surreal part was that I was working with Oscar, Oscar Kitely. He's an amazing New Zealand actor. He's made a lot of New Zealand movies, and he's actually another influence that I've had since I was little. And he was in it, and I remember doing a scene with him and just being so nervous to meet him, because I hadn't met, worked with celebrities, or I'd met them whatever on set with my dad, but it was a very much like first baby daughter, like chill. Oh, you're so cute. But now it was like, okay, I'm working with him. I need to be professional, and I need to be cool. And he was just so lovely to me, and I immediately realized it was like that information, like, oh, information installed, that humans are all humans. We're all people. We're all, like, why would I expect him not to be so kind and generous? And yeah, I actually got to work with him more recently, last year, on a project he did. And he was like, "Hey, we did that job together." And I was like, "You remember that was my first job? That yeah, yeah, we thank you." um, so yeah, I think that was the most surreal out of all of it. And then also realizing on set, amongst all the frilly fun stuff, um, realizing a little bit what screen acting is, and realizing I just had to be myself, especially for that role. It was very much kind of me, except a little naughty me. And so it was dropping all of the theater that I'd done when I was little and just letting it sink. Um, and so that, yeah, that was wild as well. Being like, oh, it's not just making facial expressions. It's like feeling stuff. So yeah, I'll always be forever grateful to that job.
And that you brought up something really interesting, and a lot of my friends have brought it up as well, and that's separating the theatrical performance from the film performance and finding, a sort of almost like a personality profile for each of those as far as, how do you approach it? How do you attack that process? So how long did it take you to figure out, your process to fitting into film?
Oh, that's a good question. It's interesting because now I find them my processes are pretty much the same. I find them actually really close now. The only difference, I guess, with theater is that there's an element of having to have like Mirabai a little bit present with the character on stage because things can go wrong and you have to find your light, and there's just so many other elements that you don't always have to think about in film. I think sometimes film lends itself really nicely to just letting yourself go and just letting yourself be the character. And yeah, you've got continuity and all of that, but there's also a lot of other people worrying about that for you. Whereas in theater, obviously, you're on stage, you're it. Like, there's no one coming in and being like, "Hey, oh, you said the line wrong, or you were holding the book like this." That it's just all you. Um, but yeah, so I guess to answer your question, because I just went on a bit of a tangent, but to answer your question, it took, oh my gosh, after coming out of acting school, I had every single technique or idea of a process under the moon in my head. And being the like massive geek that I was, I just wanted to encompass all of it at all times. And I would feel like if I didn't do like one of the techniques, then well, maybe I'm not being professional. I haven't worked hard enough. And so it took me a while coming out of acting school. And oh my gosh, all my tutors said this. They were like, when you come out, you're gonna realize what suits you, but it takes you a while. So luckily I was given warning for that, but I still thought I could do it all because I wanted to be the one that does it all. So it took me a while to really let myself let go of techniques or whatever you want to call them, and just really ask myself, hey, what works, and what is sustainable. And I mean, I'm always learning, so it's always going to change. At the moment, yeah, so that's the thing. It's maybe a year after acting school, which is a few years ago, that's when I felt like I had a process that worked. But now I've got another process that is really working for me at the moment, because I've just been working with Tanya Nolan and the Margie Harbour acting studio. And that's all about memories and imagination. So at the moment, I'm just really, really invested in imagination, because memories, and this is something I've always been interested in. I actually did a paper at uni, like memory in film. And this is the thing about learning. Like, even when you're not learning about acting, you're learning about so much that informs it. But anyway, I remember learning about memory and imagination, and they're so close together. They're almost the same. Like, you can create an imagination and then tell yourself that's a memory, and you think it's a memory. And so I think that's a really nice way in to characters to be authentic and to be honest with them. For me, at least, it really works for me. Um, and also, imagination is why I got into this in the first place. I love imagination. and it's like the play is at the center of imagination. So it's in there. That's my process. Imagination, which is like, yeah, obviously actors imagine, but it's one of those, like, you know everything, but then
Yeah.
a teacher tells you them, and suddenly it clicks in ways that, oh, I didn't know it like that though. I mean, yeah, I mean, no, nobody knows everything. Sorry, but you know what I mean. Like, you know that you need to imagine things, but not until someone like unlocks that for you. Yeah, it's well for me. Sorry. Yeah, it's so interesting. I could talk about it all day, so I'll stop there. But to summarize, my process is creating memories for my character when I get a script for auditions and roles that I get, and tricking my brain into thinking that they are memories. And so then going into scenes being like, oh no, this is me, and every line I say is not a line; it's just a thought that my character thinks, because that's what humans do. So,
Oh yeah. No, first off, I want to say like I love how excited you get about it because
yeah,
you put any cluster of actors in a seminar that teaches something like that, we just get so like giddy and into it, and next thing you know, we're just deterring people from sitting next to us at the local bar because they are sick of hearing everything we're saying. But I love the correlation of you know imagination and memory and creating this sort of this sense of flow every time you pick up new sides for a self tape because you're going right back into that thought pattern and trying to craft and create. And I do want to see with where you are right now and the fact that we're post covid, we're still doing self tapes. What is your approach to, outside of like that kind of prep, but your approach to decompressing after, let's say you have 3 or 4 self tapes in a day, or and maybe you get a few over the weekend when you had plans. How do you decompress and kind of shake that off so you can get back to your life afterwards?
yeah. Look, it's really funny because um, in New Zealand, and not to be like in New Zealand, it's so different, but it really is. We don't necessarily you won't ever really have more than one audition a week, really. And even then, that's really lucky. There's lots of actors that don't get that many auditions. So there's always a lot of pressure when you get an audition to do the best you can with it, because there's not as much work in New Zealand, of course. And then when you get international stuff, it's like, oh, okay, I'm being seen over here, so I really need to nail it. But I think obviously every actor thinks that to some degree. But yeah, I'm the worst. I I let auditions take over my life as I do with roles, and so if I have an audition on the weekend, I'm like, cancel all my plans. Nope, sorry, can't celebrate your birthday. I have an audition that I need to work on, so cancel. And then I'll do all my work on the audition and realize I can still celebrate their birthday and be like, oh, sorry, I'm actually coming. Um, so the way I decompress from this all and manage that is yoga. I do yoga like 3 to 4 times a week, and it really just reminds me to breathe. Like, literally, the teacher, my favorite teachers are the ones that literally say breathe the entire practice, like breathe in, breathe out as you go. And that's so helpful to me. And to just reconnect my body to my mind and refine the joy, refine the intention that I need that day, and go out just feeling, just go out, like, I just leave yoga remembering that I'm here to experience joy. I'm doing these auditions for joy. And so yeah, I would say yoga is a big one, and hanging out with friends. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's nothing, because I get so attached to my characters. Hanging out with friends is the best way to decompress for me, because they remind you that you're not this other character. You're not your process, and work isn't your whole life. Acting, as much as acting becomes people's whole lives, it really isn't. And friends you do it for other people, you do it for your friends, you do it for your family. So definitely just laughing with my friends.
That is the best medicine, especially after some of the dour, auditions some of us have to do to just kinda snap out
Yeah,
of it. I'm
yeah,
really curious, I didn't think I'd ever see another new Evil Dead film after the one that was released 10 years ago that I thought, "Okay, well, I can't do gore anymore, so I don't have to do that again." And then I see this one and, you're seeing just for those of you who haven't seen it, if you're not great with horror movies or gore, just don't order like a pizza before you do it. Probably not the best bet, but I do wanna ask you about your experience, auditioning for Evil Dead Rise, and then what you, kind of brought with you and took away from being there and working on set. What was that experience like for you? Because that's so cool and disgusting.
yeah. It was so cool. I love horror. I even when I was doing uni, I did a paper on horror. So I've always been a big fan, and I of course know what Evil Dead is and how big it is. And as soon as I read the script, I I really knew it was going to be a good Evil Dead movie as well. I mean, I love them all, but I had so much faith and trust and excitement in the script and what it would be. And so yeah, auditioning, I just did the one audition, and I hate it when people say that. Like, I hate it when I hear people just didn't even do, because I've been in the place where I've done like 5 auditions and then not gotten the part. So I know how annoying it is to be like, yeah, I just like did an audition and then got a call and I got it. But it was kind of simple like that. But we weren't. It was I auditioned when like the rest of the world was in COVID, so we in New Zealand weren't. So I luckily had an in-room audition, which is so good for horror, especially because the casting, like you need a casting director. Casting directors are so incredible, and the casting director for this built the world for me and really helped me see what was going on, because that is vital, especially in horror when you're just in a room and you're trying to imagine someone's running at you and you're trying to like have like literally like the most like scary thing that's ever happened to you in your life is happening right now in this room and you're imagining it. Uh, so yeah, I'm just really thankful it wasn't a self tape for that reason. But yeah, man, it was one audition.
Uh,
And then you asked about what I took out of the experience as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes. Um, just how much fun it is. No matter how big or small the set is, just it's just all sets are kind of the same in that it's everyone's coming together to make this movie or this TV show or whatever, and everyone's job is the most important job on it. You know, we had prosthetics and makeup and like art department, all the different departments all coming together to make. Honestly, I don't understand how it happens. Like, I don't want to say what happens to my character because it's kind of a spoiler, but something happens. Anyway, it's a big thing, and it happens to lots of different characters in the movie. But they just make that happen, and I always think I'm like, oh, we'll like fix it in post, blah blah blah. But literally, it was amazing to see on set that the makeup artist and the prosthetics and the costume were. This was literally happening in front of my eyes. Like, I was literally seeing like heads being ripped off. I mean, obviously not a real head, but it looked like it. And I was seeing, like deadites that, like, I just, it's just so amazing to appreciate what you are given on set. And that is everyone doing their job to the best they can do it. And it really makes you go, yeah, well, I'm here to do my job the best I can do it as well. So it's, yeah, I think what I took out of it was like every set, it's a team and it's a ship, and we're running to make the ship work, and how lucky we are to have that time together.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you knocked it out of the park in the bloodiest of ways. Before I get to my last few questions, though, I need to ask you right off the cuff, if you have one, what is your favorite horror movie or your guilty pleasure horror movie, if that's easier to
Ooh.
answer?
I haven't. I've got an immediate answer for my favorite horror movie, and that is Suspiria, the original. I just love that movie. I love aesthetic movies. I'm a real aesthetics girl, but that movie is just like, oh, it's aesthetic pleasure. It is a pleasure to watch. It's like the colors just do something to. They take you into another world, and then I watched the remake as well. It's not a remake actually. It's a completely new movie, and I loved that too. That is up there now with one of my favorite movies. But Suspiria original will always hold the place of my favorite horror film. Can I ask you what your favorite horror movie is?
Oh god, I wasn't ready for that. I was like, no, she's gonna
Sorry.
pass over this. That's not gonna happen.
You
Keep
can
in
think
mind,
whatever's
listeners,
at the top of your head.
it's like midnight my time. So if my answer's like not good enough, it's just because I'm tired. That's all it is. No, honestly, I really need to start asking myself these questions because I'm just never prepared. But I will say the horror film I absolutely love and have watched the least and yet still own, I've only seen it maybe 3 times, is The Strangers.
I haven't seen The Strangers. It's actually on my list. I
Oh,
want
you
to watch
haven't?
so bad. I haven't seen it. No, I'm gonna watch it. Probably
Oh,
tonight. Now that you've mentioned it, I'm like, that's right. That's a movie I need to watch.
uh, yeah, I remember seeing it I think I saw it when I was 16 in a theater, jam-packed, and all of us are like, all the music is diegetic. Any music comes from the film itself, so you're sitting there, and if something happens or music's playing, you're on edge for, I think it's only 97 minutes, something really, really short. So
Mm,
definitely, watch that one, let me know what you think, and then the sequel is a little more pulpy, a little more meta, like they address, what they're kinda going for. They're going for almost a Carpenter sort of feel instead of this, like,
oh
um
yeah.
French new wave of horror, like high tension. But yeah, it's a fantastic horror movie, and I cannot wait for you to watch it. Just triple check your locks on your doors before
Oof,
you
yeah.
watch.
I will.
But carrying on into the last few questions I have for you, the biggest one is if you have a party story that you could share with our listeners. So something that has taken place throughout maybe your life, your career, something you've experienced that just stands out so immensely, you would easily tell the story to friends at a party.
Party story. Okay. I think my party story is from my first job that I talked a bit about before. And because it just sticks out to me because it was embarrassing. Um, and I'll tell it. It was my last day of filming for the job, and I was so excited because my last few scenes were my character throws a party, and all these people come to my house, and I was like, oh my gosh, all these young people are gonna be like on set hanging out. It's gonna be like a real party. And then, but those were like at the end of the day, so I had like all these other scenes throughout the day that I had to get to before I got to that one. So I wake up and I am so sick, like flu sick, just disgusting, like snotty, like hot and cold. But I'm like, no, this is the last day. I can't not be there. And I'm professional because, I'm 14. Well, you don't know what professional means. Professional to a 14-year-old is like going to school when you're sick because you're going to get your work done. So I was like, nope, I'll go. Like, you sure you're okay? I was like, yeah, like I think it's just a bit of a cold. I'll be fine. It's also pre-COVID as well, so I'm not putting anyone in danger. This is pre-COVID. And also, it's really hard to reschedule film and TV, right? Like it's
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of people's jobs who everyone's coming in to set up for these scenes, and changing it costs money. Um, and I was aware of that because, like, I knew my dad's a first AD. Literally, he's the one that when someone's like, "I can't come into set today," it's the worst. The first AD is the one that like solves all the problems, along with lots of other people. So I think there was also an element of that, of like first ADing myself. So I walk onto set, like go on in, and I'm just trying to just telling everyone like, "Oh, hey, everybody, like, how are you feeling? You look at that green today." Like, no, I feel absolutely fine. Not sure what you're talking about, but could I get a blanket? Because I'm freezing. And then like 5 minutes later, oh, could I get like an iced tea? I'm really hot, like taking my layers off. And so the first thing was in a principal's office, I think, and it was with, like the principal would have been played by a really significant New Zealand actor who I can't remember who played the principal, but I remember knowing their face and really wanting to do well for them. And my character was being questioned. And so I was like, you know what? I can control this. I can control the snot. I can control the chills. Let's work through this. And then they call action, and I'm doing it. I'm getting through it because, you get adrenaline and you're absolutely fine. Like adrenaline, actors, whenever they perform, they could be like the sickest and they're absolutely fine. But my one thing I will say that is really hard to work past with adrenaline is stomach sick. And during the scene, I'm like, oh, and my stomach is just like, uh-oh. And I can just feel myself like wanting to throw up. But I was like, no, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to throw up in the middle of a take. So I literally wait till I finish the scene somehow with like as much adrenaline as I can like pump into my body. And then as soon as I call cut, I just like sprint off set and just start vomiting in the bushes. And of course, I'm 14, so I have a chaperone. So my chaperone's like running after me. It's like, you okay, Mirabai? They're like on the radio, like, I don't know what's happening. She's running. And then, oh, no, okay, she switched to two. And, switch to two means I need to have a private chat with someone, or switch to 15, whatever channel on the radio it was. And so then I was just like vomiting and then getting up out of the bushes and being like, no, absolutely fine. I think I just had like food poisoning. I'm ready to go now. And then like vomiting again, just trying to convince the chaperone that I'm okay. And eventually the chaperone was like, okay, fine, we'll let you finish the scene, but we need to figure out like what we're going to do with you. So I finished the scene just vomiting in between takes. And then luckily my next scene I had a break. And so the chaperone took me to the cast trailer and like gave me a pillow and a blanket and just let everyone know, hey, Mirabai's a bit sick, so we'll just let her chill out for the next like hour or however they had. But the funny thing about the show is it's a crime show. Like there's like druggies and gangsters and all those sort of crime related people. And we share our trailers in New Zealand. You don't necessarily have your own trailer if it's a New Zealand show. And so through the day, I was like sleeping, like this poor little like 14-year-old girl sleeping and vomiting. And just these guys would come in with like big leather jackets and like tatted up and like long straggly hair. And it was such a surreal moment of like being in and out of consciousness and seeing these like really big scary men who are like lovely actors, but like I was not really in my full self. And so it was, yeah, I just remember like fading in and out, and these poor actors like had to deal with this like disgusting little 14-year-old vomiting. And that's my story, and it still cringes me out. And I feel yeah,
Oh,
I would not do that now, just so everyone knows. If I'm sick, I will let people know.
that is like that is, I'll be honest, that is my worst nightmare, working on a set, you know? It's
Yeah.
uh, and you went through that at 14 and you're just like, "No, guys, I'm good. I'll sleep for a little I'll sleep for a little bit and I'll be
Yeah.
fine." I think that may be, one of the most like horrific party stories we've had on this show. 'Cause that
Well,
just
that you know what? That suits me fine.
and I appreciate that. And with that comes a great follow-up question, and that's if you have any advice you could pass on to our listeners that you've personally held on to, whether they are somebody who's looking to start a career in, the entertainment industry, or they've been in it and they're trying to stay in it during these crazy times we live in. Is there anything you could pass on to them?
Well, first and foremost, if you're sick, let people know. uh, but I think uh, I've probably talked about it so much already on this podcast, but never stop learning. It's so it's so enriching, and not only helps if you're studying, literally doing acting classes, so great for your scope and to keep it fresh as well, but also any learning. It's like, be curious, because we're playing. If you really want it, then you are gonna be all different types of people who know all different types of things. So I think stay curious, remember the joy, always have the playfulness. And actually, this is something that I was talking to a New Zealand actor and creator, and his name is Joe Damon, because I'm about to quote him. He said this really beautiful thing that I've always subscribed to, but he just said it so beautifully. And it's that when you're young, you love things unconditionally. So he talks about how he loved walking when he was little, and how he loves films. And so I loved playing, I loved acting, I loved performing. And he says, when you get older, you become an adult, and you think this part of growing is letting go of all of these things that you loved when as you were a kid. But the thing is, if you love something unconditionally, doesn't that mean you can never stop loving it? And so it's it's really sad that we let go of those things, because you still love them, even if you put them to a side. Even if he didn't go for walk, he would still secretly love it, but bury it with all this other stuff that we build up. And so my advice is to find, to remember that, if you're doing this because you love it, which you should be, because it's, as it's not like, it's not this easy breezy sort of green field. So remember that, and nurture that, like, inner child, because that and your friends and your family is what makes it worth it, and it makes the lows and the highs so loving and so filling. So that would be my advice: friends, family, inner child, learning. To bullet point it.
No, I absolutely love it, especially the friends part, the family part, the sense of community that you need. Don't go at this alone, because it's a lot more lonely than you'd expect as as an artist if you
Yeah.
don't have any support. And that's no way to live. Uh, I do also want to see, of course, Evil Dead Rise. I have to promote that with the episode. But if there's anything else I can promote for you in the episode notes, could be a project you're really excited about, maybe a show you're watching right now, could be a charity that you're really passionate about. Is there anything that comes to mind that I could share for you?
Um, I mean, yeah, Evil Dead Rise, the best. It's such a great movie. And also watch some New Zealand TV. We have some really interesting stuff out there. Uh, so do a little search. I know there's some shows that can be found, like the golf. I don't know about other shows, but I think, yeah, watch some New Zealand television. And then also, I just finished a play called Champions, written by Isabella McDermott and directed by Harriet Mayer, and it was the debut of the play, and it's such a beautiful play. So I think watch out for that as well, because it's got a bright future ahead of
Oh,
it.
yes. And I'm always an advocate for, watching anything outside of what we have in the States, because it's all just wonderful. No, I really appreciate you sharing all of those. And for the last thing we have to do, I mean, first, I want to say thank you again for your time and joining me in this talk and nerding out over horror movies. I hope as your career continues to grow that you can come back to the show and we'll keep talking horror movies and just awkward moments
Oh
on
yeah.
set. Hopefully, I won't have a food poisoning or stomach flu experience, but if I do, I'm going to tell you first because you just brought that into the ether.
You owe that to me.
But I do need to preface this last question by asking if you've ever seen Wayne's World.
I have not seen Wayne's World. No,
Oh
I've
man,
heard of it, but I actually don't even think I know what Wayne's World is. Is that really bad of me? What is Wayne's World?
it's not bad. So I cut my teeth on American comedies from the early '90s when I was a very
Ah,
small child, way too young. But Wayne's World is two slackers, I want to say, rock aficionados who have a public access show in one of their parents' basement, and they end up getting bought out by a company. And there is a moment in the film where things go bad. I won't spoil it for you, but one of the hosts is left on stage by himself, and he just kind of has a scanner's moment where he's kind of freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. So that is the point of origin for what I like to call the awkward goodbye. So essentially, I'll give you a silent 3, 2, 1 countdown. And when I point to you, just give us your best verbal awkward goodbye, and I will stop the recording from there. Is that something you might be comfortable with?
I love it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Great. What a
Super
great idea.
awkward. Okay. Here we go. In
Yeah. Oh, we got, sorry, one. Oh, mm, thank you so much for having me. It's super fun. Um, yeah, cool. Yeah, bye. See ya. It's been nice. So good. Fun. And don't tell anyone about my vomiting story. Whoopsies. No, I mean you can because I did it for the. Okay, I'm gonna go now. This is. Yeah. Goodbye. Thank you. Yay.